Beneath the sands of China's Gobi Desert lies a secret city of art, carved not from ambition but from faith. For over 16 centuries, these caves have guarded colors that never faded, scrolls that rewrote history, and stories humanity almost forgot. Today, we journey into one of the world's greatest mysteries, the Dunhuang Mokao Caves, where every wall speaks, every brushstroke breathes, and every silence hides a secret. Before we step inside, subscribe and join our expedition, because this isn't just history, it's a doorway into the soul of civilization. The lost city of Merv, rise, glory, and disappearance of a Silk Road jewel. History rarely follows a neat or predictable path. It twists and turns like a forgotten river, carving out civilizations that rise in brilliance, only to vanish in silence. Among the sands of the Karakum Desert, in present-day Turkmenistan, lies one such ghost, the ancient city of Merv, once described as the jewel of Central Asia. For centuries it dazzled the world, rivaling Baghdad and Constantinople, only to be swallowed by desert winds in Merv's story is one of ambition, knowledge, destruction, and enduring mystery, a haunting reminder of how fragile even the greatest human achievements can be. Long before empires drew borders or caravans mapped trade routes, the oasis that would become Merv shimmered like a mirage in the desert. Archaeological evidence suggests human activity here as early as the 3rd millennium BCE. Small settlements clustered around the Murghab River, the city's lifeline, where fertile soil defied the surrounding dunes. Over millennia, these scattered villages coalesced into a permanent urban center, one destined to become a pivot between worlds. Merv's earliest recorded prominence emerged under the Achaemenid Empire, 6th–4th centuries BCE. Known to the Persians as Margu Shar, it served as a satrapal capital, guarding the empire's northeastern frontier. The city thrived again under the Seleucids, and later the Parthians and Sasanians, each leaving behind layers of architecture and culture that reflected their vision of empire. By late antiquity, Merv had already gained fame as a crucial node in the vast overland trade network linking east and west, what the world would later call the Silk Road. Merv's geography defined its destiny. Nestled at the juncture where the trade routes from China, India, Persia, and the Mediterranean converged, it became both a marketplace and a melting pot. Caravans laden with silk, jade, spices, gemstones, and manuscripts flowed through its gates. But it wasn't just goods that crossed its thresholds. Languages, religions, philosophies, and sciences traveled with them. The city's skyline rose above the desert like a promise of plenty. Fortified walls, grand bazaars, mosques, palaces, and caravanserais filled with travelers speaking Persian, Arabic, Turkic, Sogdian, and Chinese. Zoroastrians, Buddhists, Christians, and later Muslims all found refuge here. In an era when most of the world was divided by faith and power, Merv stood as a beacon of cosmopolitanism, a living experiment in cultural coexistence. To merchants, it was a profit haven. To scholars, a library of knowledge. To rulers, a strategic treasure too valuable to ignore. Merv's apogee came in the 11th and 12th centuries CE, under the Seljuk Empire, a dynasty that stretched from Anatolia to Central Asia. When the Seljuks made Merv one of their imperial capitals, the city bloomed into an intellectual and architectural marvel. Chroniclers called it the Mother of the World. Medieval travelers wrote of its wide avenues shaded by gardens, minarets that pierced the heavens, and markets overflowing with silk and silver. Estimates suggest the population may have exceeded 500,000, making Merv one of the largest cities on Earth, surpassing even Baghdad and Constantinople in certain periods. It was not merely a city of commerce, but of scholarship. Libraries rivaled those of the Abbasid caliphs. Observatories charted the stars above the desert. Hospitals taught medical science long before universities formalized the discipline. Scholars of astronomy, mathematics, theology, and medicine gathered here, translating Greek, Persian, and Indian works into Arabic and Persian. Figures such as the polymath Omar Khayyam are said to have passed through Merv, contributing to the scientific ferment that defined the Islamic Golden Age. Knowledge was the city's true currency, and it traded in abundance. Architecturally, Merv reflected this prosperity. The Great Kizkale Fortress, the Sultan Sanjar Mausoleum, and layers of city walls demonstrate an advanced understanding of engineering and urban planning. Archaeologists marvel at the precision of its brickwork and the complexity of its irrigation systems. The city was a self-sustaining oasis, a triumph of human ingenuity over a hostile environment. But even the brightest light casts shadows. In the early 13th century, the steppes beyond the Oxus River trembled with the hoofbeats of the Mongol hordes. Genghis Khan's armies swept westward, annihilating anything that resisted. By 1221 CE, after devastating cities like Bukhara and Samarkand, the Mongols turned toward Merv. Knowing resistance meant certain death, Merv's leaders chose surrender. Chroniclers record that the city opened its gates peacefully, hoping mercy might spare it. What followed, however, became one of history's most horrifying massacres. Persian historian Juvayni wrote that the Mongols killed nearly every inhabitant, estimates ranging from hundreds of thousands to over 1 million. The libraries that had preserved centuries of learning were burned. Palaces were reduced to ash. Mosques collapsed beneath the weight of fire and fury. Modern historians debate the precise numbers, but not the scale of devastation. The destruction of Merv was so complete that contemporaries said a rooster could walk across the city without stepping on the ground, only on corpses. Whether that's literal or hyperbolic, it captures the trauma of a civilization extinguished in days. The Mongol invasion explains the city's immediate destruction, yet historians and archaeologists suspect deeper, slower forces were already at work. Merv's decline seems too total, too irreversible, to attribute solely to war. Merv owed its existence to the Murghab River. When its channels shifted or dwindled, the city's lifeblood vanished. Studies of ancient riverbeds show that over time the river changed course, likely due to both climatic variation and over-irrigation. Without reliable water, agriculture, the base of urban life, withered. The desert began reclaiming its prize. The same ingenuity that had created the oasis could not halt nature's slow sea. The 13th century saw the rise of maritime trade connecting Asia and Europe via the Indian Ocean. The overland Silk Road routes, once vibrant arteries of exchange, lost their primacy. Merv, positioned deep in the continental interior, found itself bypassed. Its wealth evaporated as caravans sought faster, safer sea routes. Even if the Mongols hadn't come, Merv's economic decline might have been inevitable. Following the Mongol conquest, new powers, the Timurids, Uzbeks, and later the Safavids, rose and fell, each shifting capitals elsewhere. None chose to rebuild Merv to its former glory. Regional rivalries and administrative neglect reduced it to a provincial outpost. Without imperial patronage, the city's remaining inhabitants drifted away, leaving the desert to finish what the Mongols began. Archaeological excavations hint that Merv's ruins conceal subterranean tunnels, layered fortifications, and sealed chambers whose purposes remain uncertain. Some may have been emergency reservoirs or ritual passages. Others could conceal archives or treasures hurriedly buried before the Mongol assault. The site still holds many unanswered questions, fueling the sense that Merv's end may involve secrets we have yet to uncover. After 1221, Merv limped on in ghostly form. Travelers of later centuries described scattered settlements amid vast ruins, fragments of domes half buried in sand, minarets rising like broken fingers toward the sky. The once fertile oasis turned to dust. By the 18th century, Merv had vanished from active maps, remembered only in legend. Yet the city's afterlife in memory proved powerful. In Persian and Arabic literature, Merv symbolized both paradise lost and divine retribution, a moral lesson about hubris, impermanence, and the cyclical nature of fortune. Poets mourned it as a city devoured by time, For modern historians, it stands as a case study in how interconnected forces, environmental, political, and human, intertwine to build and destroy civilizations. The fall of Merv is not merely a historical event. It's a parable. It illustrates how civilizations depend on delicate balances between environment and exploitation, trade and technology, culture and conflict. Once any of these falter, collapse can come with breathtaking speed. Unlike Samarkand or Bukhara, which recovered after Mongol devastation, Merv never rose again. Why? Perhaps because its greatness was bound to a specific ecological and geopolitical moment that could not be recreated. When the river shifted, the Silk Road declined, and empires moved on, the foundation that sustained Merv simply dissolved. In this sense, the Mongols were merely the final blow, not the true cause. Merv's disappearance becomes a meditation on impermanence, the Buddhist concept that all things, no matter how glorious, are transient. The city's silence today speaks louder than any chronicler's lament. Walk through Merv's ruins today, and you hear only the wind. Yet if you listen closely, you might imagine the distant chatter of merchants, the call to prayer echoing through markets, the scratching of scholars' quills. Each mound of sand hides fragments of pottery, coins, or glass, whispers of lives once intertwined by trade and faith. Modern technology, satellite imaging, drone surveys, digital reconstruction, is now helping archaeologists map the ancient canals and walls, bringing Merv back to life in virtual form. Perhaps, through these digital eyes, humanity can at last comprehend how such brilliance emerged in the desert and how easily it can disappear. Merv's story transcends geography. It is the story of civilization itself, the eternal rhythm of rise, flourishing, and fall. It reminds us that progress is never guaranteed, and that every city, no matter how advanced, rests upon fragile foundations of nature, economy, and human will. When we gaze upon Merv's silent ruins, we aren't just looking at a lost city. We're looking into a mirror, seeing the potential fate of any society that forgets how closely prosperity depends on balance. In the end, Merv teaches us humility. Empires fade, knowledge burns, rivers dry, and sand buries the monuments of pride. Yet the questions endure. What truly sustains a civilization, and can we learn from Merv before the desert claims our own creations? In the vast expanse of China's northwestern desert, where the dunes of the Gobi meet the endless horizon, lies a place that seems to have been forgotten by time. The Mogao Caves of Dunhuang. From afar, the cliffs appear ordinary, just another sandstone bluff weathered by centuries of wind. But as you draw closer, something extraordinary emerges. Hundreds of carved doorways pierce the cliffside, each one leading to a hidden chamber, a secret sanctuary of faith, art, and history. This is Dunhuang, once a vital oasis town on the ancient Silk Road, the artery that connected China to Central Asia, Persia, and the Mediterranean world. It was here, more than 1,600 years ago, that travelers, monks, and merchants rested, bringing with them not only silk and spices, but ideas, stories, and beliefs that would forever shape human civilization. The story begins around 366 CE, when a Buddhist monk named Lei Zun is said to have witnessed a vision near the cliffs of Dunhuang, 1,000 golden Buddhas glowing in the desert sunset. Inspired, he began carving the first cave into the soft rock, creating a place of meditation and worship. What began as one humble cave soon grew into a monumental complex. Over the centuries, dynasties rose and fell: the Northern Wei, the Shui, the Tang, the Song, and with each new era, more caves were carved. By the time of the Tang dynasty, Dunhuang had become a cosmopolitan hub, bustling with pilgrims, traders, and scholars from as far away as India, Iran, and Byzantium. Every traveler who passed through left a trace of their culture in brushstroke, sculpture, pigment, or prayer. The result is a breathtaking record of human exchange. 492 surviving caves, filled with over 45,000 square meters of murals and 2,000 painted statues. These weren't just shrines, they were portals into belief and imagination. Within the flickering glow of butter lamps, artists painted celestial beings floating among clouds, bodhisattvas crowned with jewels, and scenes from the life of the Buddha rendered in colors that still radiate today. But one question has fascinated archaeologists and engineers alike. How have these delicate works survived more than a millennium in a desert notorious for its harsh winds, sandstorms, and extremes of heat and cold? The answer lies in a combination of environmental luck and ingenious craftsmanship. First, the Mogao cliffs are carved from loess, a fine compacted silt that is relatively soft to carve, but surprisingly stable in arid conditions. When reinforced with wooden beams and coated with clay and straw plaster, the caves became naturally insulated, cool in summer, warm in winter. Second, Dunhuang's extreme dryness has been a hidden blessing. Humidity, which would normally rot pigments and crack plaster, is almost absent here. The air, parched and still, acts as a natural preservative. But beyond nature, the real brilliance lies in the techniques of the ancient artisans. The murals were painted on a base of clay mixed with straw layered over the rock. Onto this, artists applied mineral pigments, azurite for blue, malachite for green, cinnabar for red, and orpiment for yellow. These pigments, ground from stone and fixed with animal glue, retained their intensity for centuries. The results are so vivid that modern conservators often remark they look freshly painted, as if the monks just left yesterday. Yet among all the Mogao caves, one chamber stands apart. Cave 17, known simply as the Library Cave. For nearly 1,000 years it remained sealed and forgotten. Then, in 1900, a Taoist caretaker named Wang Yuanlu, who had taken it upon himself to restore the caves, accidentally broke through a walled section and discovered a small chamber packed from floor to ceiling with ancient manuscripts, paintings, and scrolls. The air that escaped that chamber was the breath of a millennium, dry, dusty, but alive with history. Inside were over 50,000 documents, religious texts, official decrees, prayers, poems, medical treatises, astronomical charts, and even contracts for the sale of camels. The oldest dated back to the 4th century. Written in 17 languages, from Sanskrit and Tibetan to Chinese and Hebrew, the manuscripts revealed Dunhuang as a true crossroads of the ancient world. The discovery was nothing short of a historical earthquake. For the first time, scholars glimpsed a snapshot of medieval Asia as it really was, interconnected, multilingual, and intellectually vibrant. But with discovery came controversy. When word of the find spread, foreign explorers, among them Sir Aurel Stein, Paul Pelliot, and Langdon Warner, journeyed to Dunhuang. They convinced Wang Yuanlu to sell thousands of manuscripts for what, at the time, seemed a generous sum, but was in truth a pittance. Today, much of that treasure is scattered across the world. London's British Library, Paris's Bibliothèque Nationale, and museums in Russia, Japan, and the United States. Only a fraction remains in China. This dispersal sparked a century-long debate. Was it preservation or plunder? To many historians, the removal ensured that at least part of the Dunhuang collection survived the turbulent years that followed. To others, it was yet another chapter in the exploitation of Asia's cultural heritage by colonial powers. Even now, the Library Cave raises haunting questions. Why was it sealed? Who decided to hide these precious scrolls, and from whom? One theory suggests that the documents were simply outdated, archived by the monks to save space. Another posits that they were deliberately concealed to protect sacred knowledge during a time of political upheaval. But the most compelling idea connects to the fall of the Tang dynasty. As the empire crumbled and the Silk Road became a corridor of warlords and raiders, The monks of Dunhuang may have feared invasion. In a final act of devotion, they sealed their spiritual heritage away, not to save themselves, but to save the knowledge of generations. It worked. For 1,000 years, the desert kept its secret. To stand inside one of the Mogao caves is to feel time collapse. The silence is heavy, yet alive. The murals shimmer faintly in the dim light, as if the deities themselves are breathing. Every figure, every painted eye seems to follow you, whispering stories from an age when art was prayer and color was faith. Dunhuang is not just a place, it's a meditation on impermanence and endurance. Where Merv, the city of wealth, was destroyed in a single night of fire, Dunhuang survived in stillness, protected by its remoteness and its devotion. If Merv was a warning that civilizations can fall, Dunhuang is proof that culture can endure if it is rooted in spirit rather than stone. And yet, the greatest mystery of all is not how the Mogao caves were made, but why they still move us. Maybe it's because in their darkness, we see a reflection of our own quest for meaning, to create, to connect, to leave something behind that speaks of who we were. As the sands shift and centuries fade, the painted Buddhas of Dunhuang remain, silent, watchful, eternal guardians of a light that no storm can extinguish. In the stillness of Dunhuang, time does not pass, it watches. The monks who painted these walls are gone, but their whispers remain, echoing through the colors of eternity from the silence of the desert. They remind us that true immortality isn't built in empires or gold, but in the art that survives the dust. The Mogao caves are not ruins, they are memory made visible,